I'm naturally very frugal, which means affordable clothing always appeals to me. When I want something new, I often find myself peeping the cheaper stores to see if they've got the thing I want, but at a lower price. And there's so many affordable stores out there, but it's dangerous territory. You never know which one to trust. But I feel like I've had enough experience and spent enough money at these places now to know which are the best and worst. So today I'm going to share my thoughts with you and hopefully help you get some affordable clothing that doesn't suck. Let's start off at the bottom of the barrel, in my opinion, H&M. This used to be my absolute go-to store, especially back in the days of real life shopping. I'd go in every week and come out with bags and bags of new clothes, because it was just so cheap, but also they do keep up with trends quite fast. And yeah, back in my heyday, I was an advocate for following trends as closely as possible, so they were right up my street. However, my love for their affordability has kind of turned into disgust now. You can still pick up a brand new t-shirt for like £5, which is just shocking really. When a t-shirt is priced that low, someone else must be paying for it in the manufacturing chain. This cheap price is also very much reflected in the quality of their clothing. There's not much I can say felt well made from my many H&M purchases. And on top of that, I find their sizing is always a little off. Things are just wildly inconsistent. They're a bit too big or too small. For example, a size small in one t-shirt will be completely different from a size small in another. The only times I will consider H&M these days is either stuff from their premium selection, which isn't exactly super premium, it's just more on the standard of normal clothing, and I also do like their collaborations. I find that they're better made, and that's usually a reflection of whichever designer they're working with. Overall though, H&M isn't worth it in my opinion. There's just much better brands out there that don't even cost that much more, some of which we're going to cover in today's video. Next up on the list is another old favourite of mine, Weekday. Weekday is of course part of the H&M family, but in my experience is a step above. I turn to them a lot when I want something a bit more experimental. They definitely cater to a younger audience, so a lot of their designs and cuts are a bit more out there. For example, their wide baggy Astro jeans and shorts are famously popular and will really hit the spot for a lot of people. So a few years back, they were my go-to store. That's not to say only young people can shop there though, especially if you just need one or two standout pieces for your wardrobe. Their Ken pants are still one of my most worn pieces, and I'd buy them again in a heartbeat. Also, I always appreciate the quality of Weekday stuff. Even though they're part of the H&M family, their pieces just feel so much better in hand. And of course their prices are in a sweet spot, not so cheap that you're concerned for people's welfare, but not so expensive that you need to carefully consider each and every purchase. For me, they are definitely worth a look. Okay, next up, let's round off the H&M family and talk about COS. I didn't realise COS were part of the same company for such a long time because they just seem worlds apart. And although I'm putting COS on the affordable list, it's definitely on the upper ends of affordability. You can spend quite a lot at COS if you're not careful, but their stuff is still decently priced when compared to other brands. The thing they do well is to make clothes that look on par with much more expensive designer brands. They have their own runway show every year, none of their clothes have logos, and overall, they just feel like they're part of that high fashion zeitgeist. But of course, the reason they're on this list is because compared to those high fashion brands, COS pricing is much more palatable for the general public. The question is though, are they worth it? Well, in my experience, yes. They're one of the only affordable brands I've tried that manage to mimic that more luxury style without feeling cheap and tacky. And in some cases, their stuff feels even better made than the real thing. For example, a lot of people rave about their Dries Van Noten dupes, and they're only about a quarter of the price. Everything I've ever bought from COS has really impressed me, and because most of their stuff is quite low-key, it often feels timeless and versatile, especially if you're looking at suiting or trousers. Overall, I'd say COS is definitely worth a look if you're hunting for something a bit classier but still affordable. Okay, let's move on to seemingly everyone's favourite brand, Uniqlo. It's no secret that Uniqlo have been one of my go-to brands over the past few years. I've done multiple collaborations with them and I rave about their stuff all the time. But that's not to say that everything they do is perfect. Well, I do think their pricing is extremely fair, and I absolutely love their yearly designer collections with JW Anderson, Uniqlo U with Christophe Lemaire, and Plus J with Jill Sander. There are a few things that I wish they did better. Firstly, they seem to be moving more and more towards synthetics recently. Even though the polyester they use is mostly recycled and the clothes still feel good in hand, sometimes you think, why couldn't you have just gone 100% cotton or 100% wool here? It would really take their stuff to the next level. I've also found their sizing to be a little bit inconsistent. For example, with their t-shirts, I need to go extra small, and sometimes even that's too big on me. I'm skinny, but I'm not that skinny. However, the fact that their stuff always sells out just shows how much of a loyal following they have. That's because they do produce a lot of timeless yet fashion-forward pieces, and at a very affordable price. And despite my earlier comment about synthetics, sometimes out of nowhere they will just use stunning materials, like Japanese salvage denim or American Supima cotton, and still keep the prices low. I would love to see them do a made in Japan collection, given that they are a Japanese brand. And I think a lot of people, including myself, would lap it up and happily pay a bit more for some proper heritage clothing. In summary though, Uniqlo are definitely one of the best affordable brands out there. They're the first place I go to when I need some new basics, and I would highly recommend them. Next up is a brand that has completely reinvented itself recently, Abocrombi. They seem to be phasing out the Fitch part of the name. Perhaps that's part of their whole image change from that sort of sleazy, jock, exclusionary reputation to something that has actually become a bit of a staple in a lot of people's closet. And a lot of that had to do with designer Aaron Levine, who was vice president of menswear at Abercrombie during this transformation. He really took things back to basics, concentrating on classic designs, good quality materials, and neutral colour palettes. And even though he ended up moving on to Amélie & Dor, Abocrombi kept consistent with his vision. I've bought a number of things from Abocrombi over the past year or two and have been really impressed. Their shrunken tee is one of my favourites. It fits perfectly and feels well made while being affordable. And at the moment, I'm really liking the look of their shirts and shorts for summer. Abocrombi definitely has that ALD vibe, but at a much more approachable price point. It's very on trend without feeling corny and forced. So yeah, for me, Abocrombi is definitely worth a look. Next up is probably one of the most affordable brands out there, ASOS or ASOS. And I'm talking about their in-house brand. Alongside H&M, I used to be an absolute ASOS fiend. With free delivery, free returns, and everything so dirt cheap, I got totally sucked into overconsumption. But I started to realise that they were basically on par with mega cheap brands like Boohoo Man and Shein. They release seemingly thousands of new clothes every single week, and it's all bang on trend with dupes of much more expensive stuff. So you can see why people get so addicted to it. The thing is though, they don't do any of it very well. It's all cheap and tacky, often full of low-grade synthetics, or even if it is natural materials, it's the worst of the worst. The fit always feels horrible and nothing seems to last more than a few washes in my experience. And as I said, they're so cheap, almost too cheap. Like, I would prefer to pay more and ensure I'm getting something that's made to a better standard. But they've chosen their path, and it's hard to see them changing anytime soon. I know they also own Topman now, which is slightly nicer than their own branded stuff. And of course, it's a good website for sales on other brands like Nike and Adidas. But on the whole, I would totally avoid ASOS. Okay, finally in today's video, I want to talk about Zara. In many ways, Zara are like ASOS. They seem to get dupes of the most on-trend items out in a flash. Except, unlike ASOS, they're not particularly cheap. In fact, they're probably one of the most expensive of the affordable brands in today's video. That's not automatically a bad thing. COS, who we talked about earlier, do the same thing, and yet I really recommend them. But does Zara live up to this standard? In my experience, no. Zara are master manipulators, in my opinion. Everything looks so good on their website. They clearly know how to take great photo shoots and make their clothes look amazing. And it's funny because they actually did a recent campaign with Aaron Levine, and as expected, everything looks perfect. But I bet if you got those items in real life, you'd probably be disappointed. Quality and fit isn't terrible, but it just isn't what you expect. Don't get me wrong, every now and then they will come out with some nice stuff, but they're just a bit too inconsistent for me. So with that being said, Zara is one to avoid in my opinion. Now before I end the video, I just want to flag a few extra brands that people may be wondering about. Firstly is Arket, yet another part of the H&M brand family. I haven't bought much from them and it's been such a long time that I can't even remember what they were like. Looking at their website, it seems to be somewhere between H&M and COS. Let me know your thoughts down below. Another brand seemingly on the rise is Banana Republic. We don't actually have them in the UK. Am I right in thinking they're owned by Gap? Either way, looking at the US website, I'd be very interested in trying them out, and their pricing seems quite expensive but still affordable. And finally, I think some people may want to know about J. Crew. I absolutely love them, but they're not actually affordable at all here in the UK. It might be different in the US, but here they're actually quite expensive, so I've decided not to include them. do let me know if you agree down in the comments below, or indeed if you think there are any other brands that need to be added to this list. But anyway, as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Zara.